You obliterated the thrilling ending Kevin formulated.
Well, yeah, that's what Hulks do. We smash things.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and today I want to talk about how the finale of She-Hulk broke the MCU. And I've been thinking about the finale of She-Hulk for about a year now because there was always something about this show that just felt wrong. I mean, there's a reason this show made a lot of people break from the MCU, and it's got nothing to do with the bad CGI. And first, I gotta be clear here. I do not hate this show. I love the She-Hulk character in the comics, and even longtime She-Hulk writer Dan Slott said that this show is the most comic-accurate show in the MCU. So before I get into what I think derailed this series, and also the MCU, I want to give equal time to a few of the things in this show that were truly great, or at the very least, a lot of fun. First, Jennifer Walters. Tatiana Maslany was perfect in this role, and they really captured the wallflower Jen versus the outgoing She-Hulk persona that Dan Slott perfected in the comics. I also loved Jen's supporting cast, especially Nikki and Pug.
Why do you need two pairs?
One to rock and one to stock.
Mark Lynn Baker, always a delight.
Hey, get off my damn lawn! I don't care if there is a drought. I got water pressure for days.
The show also gave us a look at the everyday life in this goofy Marvel universe, with Jen being this kind of every woman fan of heroes that asks the questions that we all really want to know.
Captain America!
Also, Jamila Jamil as Titania being reinvented as an influencer beauty queen was perfection. The episode featuring her beauty products and her stealing Jen's name was an absolute top-notch adaptation from the comics. This reinvented the character from the page into something fresh and new. It's exactly what I want out of a comic book adaptation.
Nice suit, Shrek.
I also loved how the show asked, hey, what would it actually be like if superheroes existed in the real world? We had really fun storylines, like the Light Elf changing shape and marrying people. I know a lot of people didn't like the Megan Thee Stallion thing, but I've met her in person. I filmed her once for a video, and she is great. She's super fun, really nice, and just a joy to work with, so I am up for that cameo.
I will kill for you, Megan Thee Stallion.
Dial it back.
Oh, gee whiz, person, look at the state of that countertop. What? It's a mess. You got pins everywhere, SD cards, a hard drive, plus it smells bad.
Is that better?
Oh, actually, that is much better, thank you. And what is that fetching little box?
Oh, thanks, man. This is actually a really thick metal organizer complete with a Tigerwood rollerball pen, and it is just one of the many boxes that I got from Bespoke Post, a monthly membership club that delivers you a box of awesome every month, and they're the sponsor of this video. Bespoke Post brings you top shelf goods from under-the-radar brands. It's free to join, and you can skip a month or quit at any time. 90% of these products come from small brands, many of which are based right here in the US. For instance, in my first box this month, Waft, I got incense cones, air freshener, and this candle from Hudson Candle, which they make just a few miles from where I live.
Oh yeah, that's so cool.
Right? And you could even shop from that company directly from the Bespoke Post site. So this is box 2 from this month. It's called Hibernate. It comes with these incredibly cozy slippers and this eucalyptus room spray that really makes you feel like you're walking into a spa. So every box of awesome like this has around $70 worth of goods inside it, but it costs just a fraction of the value. Every month you get introduced to cool new products that you would never think to try on your own. There's outdoor gear, kitchen goods, clothes, and even live oysters, plus barware. For instance, today we're talking about box number 3, which is Swivel. Like, I just tend to accumulate crap on my desk. Pens, AirPods, SD cards, keys, hard drives, and this magnetic beechwood and aluminum organizer fixes my clutter problem.
Or what if you don't like what they send you?
Well, for one thing, they choose the boxes based on a preference quiz that you fill out, and then you can preview the box of awesome before it ships. Then you can either keep it, swap it, or just skip the month at no charge. So all of this also makes for a great gift for somebody because it is so customizable, and you're buying something that, well, frankly, nobody would ever think to get for themselves. So to get 20% off your own box of awesome, click the link in the description and enter the code ScreenCrush20 at checkout, or go to bespokepost.com/ScreenCrush20. Now back to She-Hulk. And like I said, before I get into what I really didn't like about the finale, I want to still talk about some things in the show that worked.
Madison is with 2 N's, 1 Y, but it's not where you think.
And the show had a lot of criticism leveled at it for being a bad lawyer show, which is a really silly critique to make. Do you think Law & Order is a good lawyer show where the bad guys are always caught and prosecuted within an hour? She-Hulk told legal stories that needed to entertain people, and by the way, it's actually a very smart, understated lawyer show. A friend of the channel, an attorney named Michael Mazzella, his social handle's right here by the way, he told us that when Mallory was questioning Jen's dates, she had already proven her point when she asked this.
Would you have gone on the date if She-Hulk had instead presented as Jennifer Walters?
So, why is this so important? Take it away, Michael.
Thanks, Ryan, and thanks for having me on the channel. So this last question is so important, ironically, because it's irrelevant. Stick with me here. Federal Rule of Evidence 401 says that in order for a piece of testimony to be admissible at trial, it has to be legally relevant, meaning that it has the tendency to make a fact and issue either more or less likely. And the important fact and issue here is who was using the She-Hulk moniker first. So Mallory calls up all of Jen's old Tinder dates in order to have them testify to the fact that she was calling herself She-Hulk on the dates prior to when Titania filed her trademark application. And Mallory gets those answers that she needs, but then she does something strange. She decides to take it one step further and ask Arthur while he's on the stand whether he would have still dated Jennifer if she presented as Jennifer, to which he honestly replies, no. Not only was that question embarrassing for Jen, but it was also completely irrelevant. It has nothing to do with who was using the name She-Hulk first. In fact, it's so inflammatory that had Titania's lawyer asked the exact same question, you can be sure that Mallory Book would have objected for it being irrelevant and substantially more prejudicial than it is probative. In layman's terms, the question served no purpose other than to embarrass Jen.
Michael goes on to say that Mallory wanted to embarrass Jen, maybe because she resented her fast climb up the ladder. It's a great analysis, and we're actually posting the whole thing on our socials, so make sure you subscribe to our TikTok and our IG so you can catch all that. Thanks, Michael. We hope to have you back on very soon. Now, those are just a few of the many highlights of this show, which a lot of incredibly talented, funny people worked on. In fact, when you watch the show Marvel Assembled that's about this series, it's clear that for the people that worked on this show, it was a labor of love. And like a lot of recent Marvel projects, I think just a little more care, time, money, and attention to this show would have made it truly great. Except, we still have that darn finale that ruined everything.
You ruin everything!
Now, there are some things about this show, even before the finale, that I really did not like. But it's mostly gripes with how they adapted characters from the comics. They ruined the Wrecking Crew, turned Abomination into a soft-spoken self-help guru, and the episode at his ranch was hands down the worst episode of the series. Not just because it ruined the Abomination, but because it made Jen's entire focus about a man, and I think that's boring and out of character for her. And also, I think the decision to make the villain a toxic internet troll was a little short-sighted and didn't really do anything to add to the discourse.
Well, I mean, you're a boy. You have the luxury of ignoring annoying people who annoy you. And maybe the women watching the show want to see a woman stand up to trolls.
Actually, that's a great point, Doug, and it's one of the problems I have with the finale. It wasn't that She-Hulk stood up to trolls, it's how they showed her showing up to trolls.
Yeah, what the fudge is this thing? Are you replacing me?
No, Doug, of course not, although I did not know you were here. This is actually a Doug plushie that we are making in partnership with Makeship. The campaign to buy one of these guys is only going to be around for like another week or less than a week, depending on when this video posts, so the window is fastly closing. You can find the link to this below or at our merch store where we design the merch ourselves. So, thanks so much to all of you for supporting our channel. Check out our link below, and thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, one and all. I hate you.
Now guys, look, there is a lot of bad in that She-Hulk finale.
This is my son, Scar.
And like, we'll talk about the truly bad things, but I don't think the finale broke the MCU because of what was bad. I actually think the best part of the finale was why it didn't work. This finale completely shattered the mystique of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh, what do you mean by that? Won't you tell us?
I'm talking about when She-Hulk literally broke the fourth wall and entered our world. Now, at the time, I thought this sequence was brilliant, and I still feel that way. It's funny, it's self-effacing, it's fresh, but it 100% hurts the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You see, the MCU has always sold its fans on the idea of this is all connected, and that, like the Cylons, they have a plan. Throughout the years, we've noted these little connections, like Wakanda on Fury's map, or the big connections.
Wakanda, Wakanda.
And one of the best things about the MCU is that not everything is planned out ahead of time. I mean, they have these incredible artists making these pictures, so a great screenwriter like C. Robert Cargill can write this bit about the Ancient One using the Time Stone to see the future. And then Marcus and McFeely were able to use that idea in Infinity War. By the way, I read that little tidbit in the Randolf Marvel Studios. It's a great book. You should buy it. So this interconnectedness makes the MCU feel like it's alive, like it's a story that's actually really happening somewhere. The comics felt that way to me for years, and actually so did Star Wars. It felt like this large, canonized story that you could just tap into. And this is why we have so much fun creating Marvel theory videos. They're fun, they're silly, they're fan fiction. And in every theory video, we talk about the MCU like it is really happening. Not that it's a series of screenplays that are written by writers, but that it's a living, breathing universe that we just get to observe. When we do this, we're not theorizing about what the writers will write, we're theorizing about what Kang is going to do, what Ultron really wants. It's a grand, agreed upon lie, just like the suspension of disbelief required to watch professional wrestling. The MCU feels like a living, breathing community where we can all contribute a piece of the story through our fandom. fandom. That is a big part of its appeal. Marvel Comics have always felt like the heroes were in our world, and the MCU kind of invites us into their world. Until the She-Hulk finale, which ruined the suspension of disbelief.
Why are you still thinking about the finale? I can't even remember what happened in it.
Okay, so very brief recap of the She-Hulk finale if your memory is a bit fuzzy. If you want to skip ahead, the chapter links are below, and I won't take it personally.
A few moments later.
So you guys that are still here, I lied. I take it very personally when people skip the recap section. There, I said it. My feelings are hurt. All those jerks who skip this section, they are dead to me. But you guys, you are the real fans of this channel. Buy our merch. So in the penultimate episode of She-Hulk, the trolls hacked into her life and she lost her temper, and so she was arrested. Now this was great because it showed the consequences of a woman daring to show her emotions in our society, which Jen had been talking about since episode 1.
I'm great at controlling my anger. I do it all the time. Because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult, or I might just literally get murdered.
And then there was this terrific dream sequence where Jen imagines that she is in a TV show like the 1970s Hulk. Incidentally, makeup She-Hulk looks a lot better than CGI She-Hulk. Now I love this sequence because it establishes that Jen can dream these wild scenarios, which frankly could show a way out for fixing the problems that I'm going to talk about later on. Then Jen wakes up in a prison, she gets a tag that will alert the authorities if She-Hulk's out. Again, it's a great metaphor. Jen's powers being taken away is symbolic of her losing her agency as a woman and her ability to move more freely throughout society. The show is about Jen learning to be a confident woman instead of always trying to be the quietest person in the room. Think of She-Hulk like an outgoing roommate that Jen is forced to live with who pulls her out of her shell. At first, Jen was reluctant to be She-Hulk, but after a while, she came to embrace the power and authority that the persona gave her. So Jen goes to Emil's ranch where her friends track down the internet trolls to this same ranch. It turns out that Todd is the lead troll and that even though Emil is there and hosting the event, he for some reason is still a good guy.
It's not what you think.
Todd injects himself with Hulk blood, a big fight breaks out, and then Jen once again breaks the fourth wall.
This can't possibly be where this season was going.
Now the moment Jen points out that the writing sucks, we cut to the Disney Plus menu, and then she goes into Marvel Studios. She goes to see the Kevin robot, which is the architect of the MCU. And I have to point something else out here. This scene is the funniest thing in the show. We have Kevin apologizing for their near-perfect products.
Some are better than others, but I leave that debate up to the internet.
Him asking her to change off screen because
you are very expensive.
And even the way they add in these little drums from Wakanda Forever when he says that CGI artists have to move on to the next project.
The visual effects team has moved on to another project.
And then it falls apart. Jen gives a closing argument saying every MCU ending is the same, and then she edits out elements of her own finale.
Powers aren't the villain. He is.
Erasing blood plot.
And finally gives herself the happy ending that she wants. Daredevil even spawns out of the sky, which again is funny at first, but for reasons I'll explain later, it was a huge mistake. And we have the family barbecue, Hulk shows up with Scar, and don't worry, I'm going to talk about Scar in just a bit, even though it pains me to do so. Hey, welcome back everybody who skipped the recap. So glad to have all of you back. You are definitely my best friends and not the worst. Now, I should also note here that I don't have a problem with heroes breaking the fourth wall or even breaking the fourth wall in the MCU. Breaking the fourth wall has worked really well in shows like Saved by the Bell or Malcolm in the Middle. In both cases, the direct address firmly roots us in the character's point of view.
When your TV privileges are taken away, you have to do something for entertainment.
Now, in both the shows I just mentioned, it's understood that the character speaking to the camera is actually a line into their inner thoughts. Like when Zach Morris does this.
Time out.
We understand that Zach Morris is not a superpowered person with fourth-dimensional abilities to rupture and reverse the time stream. He's just taking a moment to think.
Oh, like that bubbles in a comic book.
Exactly, and there are also brilliant shows like Fleabag, which not only clue us into the character's thoughts, but also show that the priest in the show is able to detect when Fleabag disappears into her own thoughts.
What was that? Where did you just go?
And in the movie Deadpool, and also in Deadpool comics, the other characters never acknowledge him breaking the fourth wall.
McAvoy or Stewart? These timelines are so confusing.
In the comics, the characters actually just write this off as Deadpool being insane and spouting nonsense. So breaking the fourth wall works, but it has to have some kind of grounding in reality.
Me, everybody in this theater is a giant sucker. Especially you!
For instance, we've had two MCU movies that open up with narration, Thor Ragnarok and Iron Man 3. And both times, it's revealed that they were actually speaking to a character in the room and not actually speaking directly to the audience. So in the first 8 episodes of She-Hulk, we understand that Jen is actually speaking to us, that this is kind of like her living inner monologue. There was this interesting part in episode 1 where Bruce hears her speaking to us.
He doesn't mean that.
But get this actually, the first episode of the show was originally supposed to be the second to last episode. So Bruce's sidelong glance right here would have actually foreshadowed Jen shattering the fourth wall in the finale.
Wait, the first episode was supposed to be the 8th episode?
Yep, they switched them around to put her origin story first. And that's why that episode randomly ends with Titania crashing through the courtroom. She was supposed to have already had a pre-existing relationship with She-Hulk before that occurred.
Oh, okay.
And actually, the finale of the show was drastically rewritten as well. Tatiana Maslany confirmed to Entertainment Weekly that they shot a different finale that was more typically Marvel and action-packed. Now, I kind of think that maybe they overcorrected with what we saw on screen, but that's just speculation. I wasn't there. Now, I should also mention that She-Hulk breaks the fourth wall in her comics, especially during the great John Byrne run, and it's awesome. She rips through her own pages, teleports by walking across panels, and confronts the book's creator for over-sexualizing her in the art. This was very meta and a lot of fun. That worked in the comics where everything's more self-contained, but this does not work in an interconnected cinematic universe.
But you just said it was fun.
Well, the problem isn't that the scene isn't fun or even that Jen meets the mastermind of the MCU. The problem is that Jen is able to use this fourth wall break to actively change the reality of her life, to change the reality of the MCU. Jen is able to completely alter these events, changing the time of day, erasing Bruce, spawning Daredevil, removing Todd's ability to Hulk, and even just doing away with the whole blood storyline. Like Deadpool was able to comment on events, even comment on the franchise, but he could never rewrite reality until he obtained an actual reality rewriting device.
Hey, it's me. Don't scratch. Just cleaning up the timelines.
Now look, I get it. What they were doing here was having Jen take control of her own show and thus gaining agency of her own life. But the problem is, this makes her God. Not just a god, the god. Jen speaks to a being who is more powerful than Odin or Eternity or the Living Tribunal or even the Watcher. She speaks to the one who sits above the table, and he gives her the ability to rewrite the reality of the MCU. There is like no way to reconcile a robot with this godlike power with the existing story of the Marvel Cinematic Universe without acknowledging that nothing in the MCU is planned and it's all subject to the whims of a studio executive. This scene formally establishes that the MCU is not about people, it's about characters. It's not about stories, it's about plot points. It demystifies the universe. Instead of inviting us in, it keeps us out. Now look, I'm not saying the Marvel Cinematic Universe needs theory crafting to survive, but I do think there's a certain element of mystique that the universe needs to sustain itself. Like, imagine you were watching a Star Wars movie and all of a sudden one of the characters looks at the screen and says, "This isn't working for me, is it working for you?" And all of a sudden they drastically rewrite the ending that we just saw.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Like, imagine you were watching The Empire Strikes Back. Luke's lost his hand. He just tried to kill himself instead of joining Vader. He's about to die. And he looks at the camera and says, "Well, this sucks. Can we go back and rewind this?" And then like gives him a happy ending afterwards. That kind of thing works in a lighthearted comedy like Wayne's World, and it would have worked in She-Hulk if She-Hulk was a self-contained series that wasn't attached to anything else. But when you take that moment and then you apply it to a greater cinematic universe that's already established rules of continuity, it feels like She-Hulk does not belong. But She-Hulk does belong. It is canon. So the She-Hulk finale kind of broke the MCU because it killed the idea that everything in the MCU connects to a larger tapestry, that it's all going to pay off later.
See you on the big screen.
Really?
No.
Aw, whatever, Kevin.
We just saw a single character rewrite the MCU on a whim. So how does that fit into the interconnected universe?
Or maybe, maybe I got it. Okay, are you ready? Okay, so maybe Kevin the Robot, right? Maybe Kevin the Robot is inside the TVA. And so She-Hulk is able to rewrite timelines from inside the TVA. And it's like Kang. Okay, no, wait, it's the TVA. This is the TVA that was controlled by Kang that we saw at the start of Loki season 2. And then like Deadpool can break the fourth wall because he's a fourth dimensional being, right? And he can. Okay,
Doug, fine. They could do all that, great. But my point is that they didn't do all that. So in order for this scene and this show to work within the framework of the MCU, the Kevin scene would have needed to have been grounded in the reality of the MCU. For instance, this could have all easily been a dream, just like that opening sequence. Then Jen wakes from her daydream and realizes what she has to do. And then, in the real world of the MCU, Jen would go after Todd, reveal his deception, destroy the stolen blood. Instead of having that resolution done for her by a man, well actually a machine, but a machine with a man's name, she would have done that for herself. Kevin does say in this scene that she's able to break the fourth wall because of a glitch that they have repaired.
You will not be able to access the KEVIN again.
What?
That error on our platform has been fixed.
But this glitch still gave her godlike powers. Now look, they could definitely explain Kevin in a way that fits in the universe at a later date, but that still wouldn't make this finale work within the show She-Hulk itself. And that's what really sucks about this ending. It's a shortcut. Instead of seeing Jen actually resolve her problems, we cut to the moments after those problems are resolved with the Deus Ex Machina. Like when she rewrites the ending of the show, she doesn't create a scenario where she can step back into the world and defeat Todd. We just cut to Todd in handcuffs. So we now have no idea how the show's actual storylines were resolved. Not that all the storylines were that great. I mean, Jen even points this out.
The bad guy steals my blood in order to give himself superpowers. Where did you come up with that original idea? Was that from every other superhero story?
Guys, listen. Come closer. Writing a bad story for 8 episodes and then admitting that it's bad in episode 9 doesn't make up for the bad story. I think they were going for something like this.
Oh, that's just lazy writing.
But we just spent 8 episodes following the blood plot. It's too late to back out at the last minute. Instead, you could just use your massively talented writer room to create a good plot from the start. Or, instead of pointing out the faults in the MCU shows, just make a really good MCU show. The thing is, Jen's right. The endings of Marvel movies are kind of predictable. We've talked about that in videos before. But like, look at what Loki did. In both seasons, it subverted the expectations of a big battle in the finale to give us a story that resonated with like each character's journey. But the ending of She-Hulk becomes so silly that it actually undermines all of the dramatic stakes that the show has worked so hard to set up. Like, it doesn't matter that Jen can't Hulk out, or that she's lost her job, because she's able to fix all of this with a shortcut. And I just got a bone to pick here. Whenever writers start to try to write material based on fan expectations, it's a creator responding to the audience. This is what happened to Game of Thrones in season 8. The writers were well aware of fan theories that Jon Snow would kill the Night King. So instead, they had Arya kill the Night King, even though that wasn't really set up in the show at all. Or like, fans really wanted to see the Mountain fight the Hound, so they set them up for this epic battle, even though the Hound's personal journey had led him to a path of forgiveness. And of course, we also saw this in the sequel trilogy, where J.J. Abrams constantly ripped the rug out from under us just so fans would get a big surprise.
You are a Palpatine.
Eat shit. And I think we can see this with Marvel post-Endgame. Instead of leading, they're following trends, following fan expectations. Instead of telling great stories, they're trying to meet fan expectations. Or, in the case of She-Hulk, they're trying to subvert those expectations instead of simply telling a good story from the start. I think this finale removed all dramatic stakes because it turned the MCU into a cartoon, where reality could be rewritten on a whim. Like, we don't care about the continuity of Looney Tunes, so why should we care about the continuity of the MCU?
This is an animated cartoon, and that in animated cartoons they have scenery, and in all the years
And finally, I can't talk about the finale of She-Hulk without bringing up the worst thing about the finale.
This is my son, Scar.
Guys, Kevin, real and fake Kevin. Scar in the comics is such a cool character. He is the son of a warlord Hulk and a sorceress, born from the blood-soaked mud of Sakaar. He is a warrior. He looks like this. How cool does this look? I mean, don't you want to know stories about that guy? Now look at the kid that Hulk brings to the barbecue. That's not a guy I want to hear stories about. That's not even a guy I want to hang out with. That's a guy I would avoid. This is the lamest we have Hulk at home attempt at adapting this character. Putting aside his haircut, and by the way, other early designs of the character look way better, this is Marvel introducing yet another character as an afterthought, like we just talked about in our Marvel mid-credits scene last week. Now this really does feel like they didn't have the budget or time to actually make a World War Hulk movie, but they wanted Scar in the MCU and in the Young Avengers, so they chucked in a PlayStation 2 rendering of Hulk into a barbecue scene and called it a day. This is one of the few straight up objectively bad pieces of storytelling in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But do you guys think that I'm being rough on the ending? What did you think about it? What did you think about the whole Phase 4 and She-Hulk as a whole? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.